Good day, welcome to today's class. Been a while on this channel. In today's class, I'll be taking you cost accounting. And if this is your first time on this YouTube channel, kindly like, subscribe, share the videos to your friends. A lot of people out there need something like this, which they do have. So share the videos to your friend. And again, if you are the one preparing for professional exams like Ican, AATS, ACCA, IELTS, I'll drop a WhatsApp number here that you can chat that will give you guidelines and classes on all those professional exams. So let's go into the topic we have for today: cost accounting. Cost accounting, let me just say a brief part of what cost accounting is. Cost accounting is a part of accounting. In accounting itself, it's subdivided into different categories. We have forensic accounting, we have forensic accounting, we have cost accounting, we have management accounting, we have different. So cost accounting is one of those we'll be treating today. But what do we mean by cost? Let me start with that. When we say costs, I know it's not a strange term to you that you are watching this video. You've heard what is the cost of something, what is the cost of the bag of water, what is the cost of this. So according to the definition I have here with me in my book, I have cost is the money value. Okay, let me read. Money value that went into the production of a particular goods. Money value that went into the production of a particular goods. Okay, let me give you a good illustration now. Imagine I produce 7 markers, and I produce the 7,000 naira with a cost, the 7 markers with a cost of 7,000 naira. Now this 7,000 naira, that is the cost of these 7 markers, is the money value. That means that the amount at which I paid to be able to produce this 7 marker is how much? 7,000 naira. That is what we mean by the money value. So let me write it: the money value that went into the production of a particular goods. Money value that went into the production of a particular goods. Production of a particular goods. So that is what we mean by cost, money value that went into the production of particular goods. And the example I gave, telling you guys that 7,000 naira to produce 7 markers, this is the money value. But if this kind of definition, if you give it in another field, in social science, that's economics, this definition is actually very wrong. It's not a complete definition, yes, because accounting deals with explicit costs. Economics deals with explicit cost and implicit cost together, but that is not the major purpose of this class. So let's just proceed. So that is what we mean by the amount at which you spend to produce a particular thing is what we mean by costs. I spent 3,000 naira to produce this. That is the money value. That is the amount that went into the production of this. The amount which I paid out to be able to produce this. That is the money value. That is the cost of that thing. So, and I believe you are all familiar with that. So when we now talk about cost accounting, or even before we proceed, let me ask, what is this cost accounting all about before we even dive into looking at what cost accounting entails? Let me give you guys a good illustration. Before we can calculate the profit of any company, any business organization, before we can know their profit, we need to understand their costs. We need to know their costs. It's very, very, very important. For example, now let's say I produce, okay, the example I gave the other time, I produced with 7,000 naira, and in the end I was able to make 15,000 naira. Yeah, I produced with 7,000 naira and I was able to get 15,000 naira in the end. Now the question is, for example, now imagine I don't know my costs. This is my cost, right? And this is my revenue. Now let's assume I don't know these costs. I just came to you and I was like, after selling all my goods and everything, I made 15,000 naira, and you ask me what is my cost, I'm unable to provide what my cost is, definitely you cannot calculate my profit. Profit is simply revenue minus cost. Revenue minus cost. Yeah, my revenue is 15,000 naira, but this 7,000 naira you don't know, you cannot calculate your profit. So that is why it is very, very, very important to consider cost accounting, because in accounting, before you can calculate your profit, you need to understand your cost. So cost accounting deals with everything. Cost accounting deals with all the accounting principles, costing principles that goes into the calculation of the cost of production. Yeah, let me come again. The accounting principle, when we use accounting principles, costing principles to get the costs at which a firm produce some particular goods. So that is what we mean by what? Cost accounting. Let me give you the definition I have here. From what I have here, I said cost accounting is the use of accounting and costing principles to ascertain or determine the cost of production. Yes, we are still saying the same thing. When you are using accounting principles, the accounting principles, accounting and costing principles. Of course, you know that the accounting principles are the GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. So when I'm using the accounting principles, I'm following the accounting procedures and the costing principles to get the cost at which a firm produce their goods. We call that cost accounting. And there is something you need to know, that cost accounting is actually a subpart of management accounting. Yeah, when we talk about management accounting, or when we talk about management, it deals with using the resources you have to achieve a higher output, right? So cost accounting deals with calculating the cost and everything, so it's just a part. When we draw management accounting, we have costs accounting under it. So because as I said earlier, management accounting deals with managing both human resources, labor resources, managing everything in the organizations, while cost accounting deals with managing the costs. Management accounting deals with managing everything in the organization. Cost accounting deals with managing the cost. So cost accounting is a subdivided part of management accounting. You need to understand that. So because in external exams, they will always ask, if not as objective, they will always ask different questions on that while in cost accounting is a part of this or what. So now let's proceed to what we call elements of costs. Okay, so what do we mean by element of costs? If you look at this marker now, we say that what are the elements of this marker? That means what are the things that made up this marker? I will say the cover is part of it, the this mouth, the ink, the plastic, everything joined together made up what we have this marker. So when I ask that, what are the elements of costs? Elements of cost simply means that what are the things that comprise of the costs of a business organization? Most times you see 3, but we have 4, but the major ones are 3. So I'll give you, we have the element of cost. We have number 1, the material costs. We have the labor costs, and we have the expense costs. So we have the material cost, labor cost, and expense cost. So what do we mean by the material cost? Material cost is the cost of the materials used in production. Yes, for example, now I want to produce flour. When I want to produce flour, I need sugar, I need flour, I need all these things joined together are what we call the material costs. The cost at which I get the material, cost of raw materials, let me put it that way, is what we call the material cost. Another one is where we have the labor cost. When we say labor cost is simply the remuneration or salaries paid to workers. Is also a subdivided part of what made up the cost. In an organization, when you are calculating the cost of a business organization, you calculate the cost of their raw materials, the amount at which they pay the labor or the laborers. The expense cost is any cost that is not under material cost and labor costs. So any cost that is not under material cost, not under material cost and labor cost. So anything that we cannot classify any cost that we cannot classify under material cost and labor cost, we classify it as expense cost. So all these three things are what made up the element of a cost. So when you want to calculate the cost of a business organization, you add their material cost, that means the cost of their raw materials, to their labor cost, that means the cost at which they pay the salaries, the workers, their remuneration, their tips, their bonuses and everything, and the expenses costs, that means a cost that we cannot find under material cost and labor costs. All these three things made up the cost of a business organization. Now that is not all. That is not all. So another thing you need to know is that these are not just the only classification of costs we have. Costs can also be direct or indirect. Costs can also be direct or indirect. Now, when the cost is direct, what do we mean? What do we mean by direct cost? What do we mean by indirect costs? Let me give you a good illustration, a good example of what a direct cost means. Brother, I hope you are with your pen and writing materials to be able to jot down the points I'm giving. So when we say a direct cost are costs that can be traced to a particular unit of production. Hence, apportionment is not needed. Yes, can be traced to a particular unit of production. Can be traced to a unit of production. Unit of production. Can be traced to a unit of production. What do we mean by can be traced to a unit of production? For example, now look at I'll give you a distinguished examples, because sometimes it's very hard to differentiate between, students find it very hard to differentiate between a direct cost and indirect cost. Now look at someone that produces, let me look at for a good company. Okay, look at I produce, let's say, I don't know, example is not coming to my head. Okay, let me start with indirect cost. I think that is way much simpler to explain. It has a lot of examples that will make you to understand better. Let's start with indirect cost. So if direct costs can be traced to a unit of production, you should know that indirect costs cannot be traced to a unit of production. Yes, indirect costs cannot be traced to a unit of production. That is what we mean by what indirect costs cannot be traced to a unit of production. Okay, look at it now. Imagine I'm a baker. I bake for living, and I'm explaining indirect costs now. I bought sugar. This sugar is actually a materials for producing, for baking. So I bought sugar of, let's say, 10,000 naira. I bought sugar of 10,000 naira. Now I bought this sugar with the aim of using it to make cake. I want to make cake. So I bought this 10,000 sugar of using it to make cake. So along the line, I used this 10,000 sugar to make cake. I used it to make sausage roll, to make fish roll, to make all sorts of things. Now if I should now ask you, what is the major reason, or the major reason for buying this sugar is to use it to make cake, right? But along the line, in the long run, I've used this sugar to produce like 4 different things. This is an indirect cost, because I cannot say this is the thing I use sugar for. It's not one particular thing I use sugar for. A material that can be used for different or various things is called an indirect cost. Another good example of indirect cost is electricity. I need electricity to produce. Yes, just like I need supply of light and everything to produce. To shoot this video. But I also need light, electricity in my room, whether to watch TV or to. If I now ask the cost of this electricity, will I charge it on this video alone? No, I will not charge it on this video alone. I will charge it on the fact because the fact I'm using it in my living room, I will charge it there. Maybe I use it for heater, I will charge it there. I use it for various things. Do you get that? So this is an indirect cost. Indirect costs are costs that cannot be used for one thing. You can use them for various reasons, for various things. While direct costs are costs that can be used for a particular thing. That's why I say can be traced to a unit of production. But this one cannot be traced because you are going to use them, like, you get what I'm trying to say. You use it here, you use it here, you use it here. Just like the sugar I gave as a good illustration. Sugar, you use it to bake cake, to bake a lot of things. It's an indirect cost. But let's say I purchase gas now. I purchase gas to be able to sell. Yes, I purchase gas to be able to sell. I think that's a good example of direct cost. I purchase gas to be able to sell. I only purchase that gas to sell. I'm not using it for any other thing. So if I want to charge the cost of that gas, I will charge it on the fact that I'm selling it. That is a direct cost because it's not usable for any other thing. You know what I'm trying to say? But indirect costs can be charged on so many bases because it cannot be traced to a particular unit. It is used for different things. So these are what we call direct and indirect cost. So let's look at other classification of it because we still have types of direct cost, types of indirect cost. Let's look at them one by one. So now we have types of direct costs. We have number one. Don't forget that I told you guys that there are three elements of costs, which is material costs, labor costs, and expense costs. Now there are three types of direct costs. Is also the three classification of costs, but you just put direct. So you can see material costs, labor costs, and expense costs are what made up costs. So just put direct for direct cost. So types of direct costs, we have direct material costs, direct labor costs, and direct expense costs. So what do we mean by direct material costs? Like I said earlier, direct material costs are materials that are bought for a particular thing. You cannot use them for another thing. So I give you an example of the gas I bought that I can only use it I can only sell it. I cannot use it for any other thing. That is a direct material cost. Direct labor costs. For example, let's say I own a business organization and I employ laborers to make use of the complex machines I use in my organizations. I employ laborers to make use of the complex machines. That is their work in the business organization. Just make use of the complex machine to be able to produce. Now, if I want to charge the cost of those laborers, I will charge it on the manufacturing. Like that is they only do one thing. I get what I'm trying to say. So I will charge the cost on manufacturing. But imagine I employ cleaner to clean both the manufacturing room, the administrative room, the different rooms. So if I want to charge that cost, will I just charge it to administrative room? No. Will I just charge it to manufacturing room? No. Rather, I will share it. So that is what we mean by that's the difference between direct and indirect. Direct has one particular place it is used for. Indirect is, that's different things it's used for. So if I employ a labor to just manage the machines in the manufacturing sector, so I will charge the cost of that labor on the manufacturing sector alone. So that is what we mean by what direct labor cost. So imagine I rent direct expenses cost now. Yes, imagine I rent what's it called? Imagine I rent machines. Yes, the machines to be used for production. I rent it at a cost of 10,000 naira. Now, if I rent it at a cost of 10,000 naira and I'm going to pay, now the machine is that what is there is that the machine, I cannot use it for any other purpose. I cannot use it for any other reason. The machine cannot be used to clean. The machine is only useful in the manufacturing sector. So if I want to charge the cost of that machine, I will charge it on the manufacturing sector alone. That is what is called direct costs. So now the addition of all direct costs, summation of all direct costs is what we call what's it called? It's called prime cost. Yes, prime cost. So when you add the direct material cost to direct labor cost to direct expenses cost, all the direct costs, you call them prime costs. So going to indirect cost also, going to indirect costs, we also have three: indirect material costs, indirect material costs, indirect labor cost, and indirect expenses costs. These are the three types you also have. So we have indirect material cost, indirect labor cost, and indirect expenses cost. So what do we mean by indirect material cost? That means a material that is bought but can be used for different things. Like I gave you example the other time, I bought sugar, but the sugar I use it to bake cake. I use it in the cake section. I use it in the sausage section to make sausage, to make fish roll, to make donut. So if I want to charge, if the cost of the sugar is 10,000 naira, if I want to charge the cost of that sugar, will I charge it to producing cake alone? No, I will share it because it is being used by all of those things I produce. That is what we called indirect material cost. Now, indirect labor cost, I give an example. I cite an example when I was explaining direct costs. I give you an example of a worker that needs to work, a cleaner. So that clean both the administrative room, the manufacturing section, the clean my office and everything. So if I want to charge the cost, I will not just charge it on one sector, I will charge it on all. And same thing with indirect expenses costs. Expenses are incurred but not for one purpose but for all purpose. I start an example here too. So that is electricity. I gave you electricity is a good example. Electricity, look at this video I'm making now. There's a light that shines so that you guys can be able to see the board very well. I'm going to pay electricity bill, but if I'm going to pay that electricity bill, will I just charge it on the fact that I'm making videos alone? No, I will charge it personally to myself also, because I also use the light to cook, to eat water and all this stuff. So electricity is a very good example of indirect cost. So all these are the classification of cost. So let's look at some other things we can talk. So another thing I did not make mention is that when you add all the indirect costs together, you call it overheads. Yes, if you are familiar with manufacturing accounts, you will have known all this term: prime cost, overhead, we call it factory overhead. So the addition of all the direct costs, we call them prime costs. Addition of all the indirect costs, we call them overhead. So let me quickly do a little summary. We start with cost. Cost is the money value, the money you put into production of something. So we talk about cost accounting, that deals with using accounting principles and costing principles to calculate the cost at which a firm spends to produce. And I told you why it is very, very important to calculate cost, because if you don't know costs, you cannot calculate your profit. So we explain the elements of cost. We have three elements of cost. We have the material cost, labor cost, and expense cost. Material cost, the cost of raw materials; labor cost, the cost at which you pay your workers; and expenses cost, the cost of expenses. So we explain direct cost, indirect cost, and here we have come to the end of the class. Don't forget to like the video, click and share to your friends, so that those that also need it, we get in touch with it. So thank you. We say goodbye for now. See you guys in my next video class. Don't forget, subscribe, click the red button below this video. Thank you.